Welcome one and all to yet another juicy, sizzling, red hot, or ice cold Kings of War battle report. Goblins versus Abyssal Dwarves, and this time it's 2,600 points, so it's quite a beastly game, and you can see from the first image here exactly how many units there are on the table. A lot of drops, especially on the Goblin side there, condensed into the middle, which can only mean one thing: it's the dominate scenario. The center point on the table is marked there in blue, and there's a few pieces of terrain there. There are some nice woods, some hills, some difficult terrain, and there are a few obstacles scattered around as well. So I will go through my list here. First of all, on the left flank we have some Fleabag Rider sniffs, and if we go back to the wide shot you can see that there are sniffs at the other side as well, and they're one of the more capable units of getting around the place, and should they need to dash into the centre at the end of the game to score points, then they're very likely to be able to do so with their great speed compared to everything else. In the middle, this ultimate blob of doom here, this gigantic wall of orange and green, just meat, non-stop, wall-to-wall meat everywhere. What we have here, starting on the left, we have a Flaggit with the Diadem of Dragonkind, the standard, he's mounted. We've got a giant. Behind there we've got one of the war trombones. To the right of the giant we have a regiment of more beasts. We have a whiz next to them, and he has, well, he's mounted first of all, but he also has Critter's Call in addition to his regular lightning bolt spell. And that's one of a few things in this list designed to counteract enemy shooting, but there isn't a whole lot of that on the opposing side, so that might not be too useful. To the right of the whiz, we have Grogger's Goons, a horde. To the right of them, we have the first of two Troll Bruisers with no upgrades. We have another Moorbeast Regiment. And then on the right of the big blob at the top there, we have a mounted Bigot who has the Blade of Slashing. He's another one who's good for taking out either war machines or holding up flyers and such. So maybe not too useful in this game, but we'll see what I can get out of him here. In the second row, in the middle there, we have three Troll Hordes and the second Bruiser. The second Bruiser has the Staying Stone, just with the extra leftover points. And the Troll Hordes, one of them has Dwarven Ale. That's the one, the leftmost. The one in the middle, on the other side of the Bruiser, has the Chalice of Wrath. The one slightly further along has the Chant of Hate. And then in the back row, the fourth Troll Horde has Blessing of the Gods. So I'm trying out some different items with the trolls here, going for some more killy effects. So one elite, one vicious troll horde, and I'll hope to throw out the more survivable ones, the ones that can stand up a bit to being wavered first, and use the other ones more of a backup to countercharge and then kill things roll. Also on the back row we've got the Mincer and a couple of war trombones, so that's 3 in total. And that is just the ultimate wall of death. So obviously more expendable units like the Moorbeasts, who are very inexpensive at the front, along with the speed of the giant and some of the mounted heroes, and then the things that I want to survive for this scenario and to do most of the killing, such as the trolls and the war trombones, are behind. And the Mincer, anything that's a bit more fragile. And there you can see another angle on the wall of meat. And over on this side we've got the other sniffs, and we've also got Cuzlo and Madfall, who does not have the spell siphon upgrade, so it's just the bare minimum. He's just likely to be used as a flank threat and a bit of a speedy harassment unit. He is speed 8, so that's pretty solid, and he'll be used in the role that you would see something like a Lycanis maybe being used in, either to support another unit in a charge, or just to threaten flanks and get behind enemy lines and be annoying in general. And also he has the -1 to nerve effect, which is why I don't want him near most of my troops, because then all my stuff will be -1 to nerve as well because of his ravenous lizard mount. On to the Abyssal Dwarves, 2,600 points of them. So what do we get for that amount here? We've got a regiment of half-breeds. Behind them we've got a half-breed champion. There is a horde of grotesques, and the first troop of gargoyles there. There are 2 of those in total. In the middle, there's a bit of a wall of meat, not quite as substantial as the Goblin wall, but it's still decent. There are 2 big hordes of lesser obsidian golems. One of them has +1 to hit, and I can't remember which one it is exactly, but there's also the greater obsidian golem in the middle there as well. In front there are 2 units of slave orcs, and there are some more gargoyles there. And there is an Abyssal Dwarf character in the middle there. He doesn't have any surge ability though, as far as I'm aware. So I can't remember which character it is exactly, but I don't think there is any surge potential in this army. Then over here, there is the big flying Abyssal Dwarf Beastie of Doom. I think there are 2 variants of that. There's one that's a caster and the other one that's more fighty. I think this is the more fighty one. And over on this side, there is a horde of black souls with the mutated throwing mastiff, represented by that little critter in front of them. There is a slave driver, and there are some Abyssal Dwarf berserkers there on the flank. So, the Abyssal Dwarves have got more units committed out on the flanks. Is that going to cost them? Are they going to be able to get these units back in the middle to score? When I saw the deployment, I thought, if I can just kind of throw things in the way of these 2 flank forces, they may struggle to make it to majority within 12 of the centre by the end of the game, especially things like this big, really slow horde of infantry. The other flank's a bit more likely because they are cavalry units. So there's the centre. And turn 1, and I elect to allow the Abyssal Dwarves to go first after winning the roll. Look, the way I'm looking at it, I've got more shooting than they have, so they want to be fighting, really. So what I would rather do, probably, is give them 1 less turn of fighting against me. So make them move first, make them have a turn where they're just moving and not fighting. We'll see if that strategy pays off, because obviously they will be able to stake more of a claim to the centre than I do. But because they're Abyssal Dwarves, I'm not overly concerned about them moving forward, because they're going to be very slow. If it was something with a lot of fast units that could dive on the centre in the first turn, I would have possibly used a different approach. But everything's just moved forward, really. Over on this side, the berserkers are a bit of an odd angle. So there's how the centre's looking. So, potential pincer, but I have got cover in the form of the hill and some trees, and I have got units out on the flanks that can cause a bit of a nuisance as well. So one thing I'm wary about is the big flying monster, the Great Winged Half-Breed, I think it's called. I would have to be concerned about that. So I'm going to, when I'm moving up, all my units are so densely packed, I should be able to avoid flank charges and give it nowhere to land. So here's what I do in my turn 1. I just move up as a blob. The only thing I've given to the Great Winged Beastie as a threat are Grogger's goons at the front there. So if he wants to just throw his big flying monster into them, and I think I've managed to get at them in the front as well, I moved them forward as far as they could go and then just nudged them back until they were no longer potential flank victims. And the giant has dipped his toe into the woods though. So if the dragon wants to charge him, hindered, then that is fine, because the giant will most likely survive that. And then I've just grounded his flyer basically and got into a duel with a giant in the woods, which would be okay by me, because that would take away the threat that's currently preventing me from advancing at full speed. You can see that Kuzlo is hiding behind the hill a bit from some of the units over there, which we'll get to in a second. So the sniffs, they're not going into threat range of the mutated throwing mastiff, because that would be suicidal. And all they've done is just shot up the berserkers a bit. And the others just shoot up the grotesques a bit. And the bigot decides, you know what, this isn't really the game for me. I'm going to throw myself in front of these grotesques because I want to just pin them on this side of the table for a while, because I don't want them threatening my flank as I advance this huge wall of meat into the middle. So I'm just going to be throwing little inexpensive speed bumps in front of them, because I think I've got the superiority in the centre. And we've got some lightning bolt action coming up. And I actually managed to kill the unit of gargoyles there as well, which is a nice bonus. So there's one unit down. And did I actually end up killing both of those gargoyles somehow? Where are the others? Because I'm sure there were 2. Let me go back here. Yeah, there were 2 units there. Okay, I remember. Yeah, the bigot charged into one of the units of gargoyles, and I lightning bolted the other one. So I overran over the top of the gargoyles, which is how I ended up in front of the grotesques there. Because to pin them in place, I wanted to prevent the gargoyles from flying off, which would have stopped them from charging anyone and limited their movement. So overran in front of them. A bit lucky to kill them, of course, and the lightning bolt killing the other unit, so some nice luck there. But I think the plan was sound regardless, just to pin those in place. And the other ones, had they survived, they wouldn't have had too many juicy charging options. Turn 2 for the enemy, the Abyssal Dwarves. So you can see the dragon, or the great winged half-breed, which is much more annoying to say, is not charging into anybody, because there isn't really a really juicy target yet, so it's just going to stay back and use a bit of breath attack. I think the other Obsidian Golem unit, the one that's not +1 to hit, I think that might have some kind of breath attack upgrade. So, in the middle, the Slave Orcs have just moved up to cause a bit of a blockage, and everything else is moving up behind them, laying a claim to the centre. The Grotesques are obviously going in and trying to take out Mr. Mounted Bigot there, and the half-breeds have moved up. They're not onto the hill, which I'm happy about, because it means I'm going to be able to continue hiding from them, because they're only height 2, and there's also a nice spot that my sniffs will be able to slide up there alongside them and turn sideways and be out of their charge arc and still shoot them. So the ranged attacks aim for the giant and put a bit of damage on him, so he's going to charge out of the woods next time and attack somebody. And over here there's more ranged attack. I think this guy has Fireball, and put some damage onto Grogger's goons there. The bigot gets killed, of course, but he's okay with that. So you can see I've also got those more beasts over on the right there as well. They're going to be the next unit that I'm going to throw in front of the grotesques to stop them threatening my flank, because I'm going to start fighting very shortly, and I don't want a unit like that staring down the flank. So turn 2 for the goblins. You can see there's the spot I was talking about with the sniffs, just moving up out the charge arc, and they're just going to have a merry old time shooting there. And if the half-breeds foolishly want to turn round and chase me around the table, then that's quite alright with me. It'll keep them out of the game, and they'll still be getting shot. So there's the more beasts moved up there. They're alright with being killed. Quite happy with that. To make extra enticing, I think they've even thrust themselves beyond the level of the difficult terrain as well, so there wouldn't be a hindrance for attacking them. And you can see here that Grogger's goons take out one of the Slave Orc units, and the Troll Bruiser had a flank charge on the other one. But unfortunately can only do 3 damage, which is very disappointing. You'd expect the Troll Bruiser to maybe do 7 or 8 damage there and kill them, but alas. The giant goes into the winged half-breed, just not expecting to kill it, but just to stop it flying, because this is the turn when I'm going to start thrusting units forward. And the other sniffs get behind the Black Souls, who turned their back on them. So I didn't take a charge on yet. I'm just moving behind them and shooting them, and then I'm going to go for the rear charge next turn, unless they turn round, which is a terrible idea, because that would leave them very, very unlikely to reach the centre by the end of the game. So they're in a bit of a tricky position. So you can see the wall of meat is moving up. Some of them have already been thrust into action, and got the dragon pinned, so it's not going to be flying off, and the trolls ready to strike when those lesser golems and the greater one get into combat. Oh, you can also see here that the more beasts rolled a 1 on the yellow-bellied test, because they were hoping to charge the other unit of Slave Orcs, and because they failed, they were actually blocking other units from getting there as well. Because I would have liked to have just had the more beasts on the front line to possibly overrun from the Slave Orcs and just blocked in some of the golems, but unfortunately they failed the test. Turn 3 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So Obsidian Golems into the flank of the giant, dragon in the front. Giant will probably die, but that's okay. The Troll Bruiser double flank charged after he failed to kill the Slave Orcs, and a bit of fireball action from that guy probably again, but I don't think it does anything. It might do, actually, because also we've got the Black Souls there who decide to ignore the sniffs and just head for the centre, which is probably the right thing to do at this stage with their positioning. And there's how that side's looking. And you can see the mutated throwing mastiff is launched at the war trombone on this side and does some damage and kills it. Giant is dead as well, as expected. The bruiser is also dead, but that's okay. And they overrun towards Grogger's goons. You can see the slave orcs there have just parked themselves in front of some of my units. They haven't charged, they just want to block in as many units as possible. And the more beasts that were on that difficult terrain are also taken out by the grotesques and the half-breed champion, and the other half-breeds have just moved sideways a bit because they couldn't really see anything. And they didn't want to charge up onto the hill because they would have been charged by this Cuslow there, there's trolls, so they wouldn't have liked that at all. So there's how it looks in general, and I should be in range to get multiple charges off now. Turn 3. So the sniffs into the rear of the Black Souls, but they don't do too much damage. But I'm not really too concerned about this, because if they want to turn around and fight me, then even if they kill me, all they can do then is turn round after combat, so that I would have stopped them moving for a turn. So that would be okay. Over here, the Maw Beasts fail the yellow-bellied roll again. Wow, wow, wow. So they are unable to charge, but luckily the trolls there did have a flank on the slave orcs and took them out. And then it was still a little bit of an annoying traffic jam though, because it meant I couldn't do too many multi-charges here. So I sent Harambe the Bruiser into the greater golem and Grogger's goons into the lesser. And then the two troll hordes and Cuslow charged in and killed the grotesques in one go, despite lots of hindered charges. But there's just so many attacks there that was always going to be likely to do something useful there. And the sniffs are just staying where they are and shooting. Those half-breeds are going to just be chipped away slowly, the longer they're not in combat. So a couple of units taken out there, and it's looking fairly healthy. I've got lots and lots of unit strength in the middle at this stage, and my opponent has quite a bit of his unit strength away from the centre, so it's going well. Turn 4 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So the half-breeds charge into Cuslow. I would expect him to be killed horribly, and the half-breed champion charges into the trolls. I would expect them to be fine. Over here, the Black Souls wisely do not countercharge the sniffs. They just move straight forward and get towards the scoring area. And the Great Winged Half-breed unleashes his ranged attack at the sniffs and kills them in one go. You can see here that these Maw Beasts take some damage from the various shooty attacks there. And Grogger's goons take damage from the lesser golems, but not enough to worry them yet, and Harambe takes a bit of damage as well. So there's going to be some nice troll flank opportunity coming up in a minute. And these trolls take a bit of damage from the champion there, and Cuslow is only wavered, which is okay, because he can still be a bit of a blockage now if he wants, or he can get out of the way and allow other things to get in there. So not really a lot of losses there. Still looking pretty healthy. Turn 4 for the Goblins. So Cuslow backs up out the way, so he's not blocking line of sight to the war trombone, which came up to have a go at the half-breeds, and the sniffs also jumped up on the hill to shoot them as well, and the combined firepower took them out. They were already on 3 damage, and a bit of nice rolling killed them. The trolls in the flank of the lesser obsidian golems there, and Grogger's goons in the front, they don't combine for as much damage as I was hoping there. And down here you can see that I had a double charge on the other golem unit with the troll horde and the Maw Beasts. The Maw Beasts obviously passed their yellow-bellied roll this time. The Mincer is just lingering in the background, ready to finish something off, should the need arise. And these trolls here countercharge the half-breed champion and waver him, as represented by a yellow dicer. See, not much damage done there on that horde. That's very disappointing with the trolls in the flank. And there's how that's looking. So that horde there has taken a bit more damage than the other. So it's still looking okay though for the Goblins. I've still got a lot of high unit strength units left, and the Abyssal Dwarves still have units that are held up away from the centre for now. Turn 5 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So the Obsidian Golems countercharge the Trolls that flank them, and they kill the Trolls in one go. So that's double disappointment there. And the Half-Breed Champion just chilling out there. Bane chant onto the Black Souls as they take on the Moor Beasts. So yeah, they're pretty much going to eat them. The Dragon charges into the Flaggit down there, who'd just been dancing around, just throwing off his diadem at people for a while. And the Obsidian Golems there have gone into the Trolls. So Harambe gets wavered by the Greater Obsidian Golem, which is okay because he can move out the way and allow something like the Mincer to get in there. And the Moor Beasts get killed, the Flaggit gets killed, which I can tolerate, I think. And you will see that the unit Black Souls there, because they move forward after the kill, they are going to be stuck in a tricky position there. Because after they move forward, they would then move sideways a bit to get an inch away from the corner of those Trolls. I think, let me just check here. Yeah, I don't think we've got the units perfectly aligned to represent what's supposed to be going on after the combat here, but you get the idea. So, you'll see that the flank of the Black Soul horde there is going to be exposed to the Trolls, who are going to be able to charge that in a moment, because they're slightly further forward than the Obsidian Golems. And anything else notable going on here? Well, as I look at it, the right flank of the Abyssal Dwarves is pretty much dead, and the left flank of the Goblins is pretty much dead. But the Goblins do have more unit strength in the middle at this stage. So, Cuslow steams in turn 5 along with the Trolls to finish off the Half-Breed Champion. The Sniffs are moving in as well because they want to get in the middle to score points. Grogger's Goons just chip away at this unit again. It's very slow going though because there's such high defense. The Mincer does steam into the Greater Golem and do a bit of damage after Harambe gets out of the way. And the Trolls, who managed to get into the flank of the Black Souls, as I was describing a moment ago, all they can do is waver the unit, unfortunately, so they're going to get flanked and killed now for their trouble. And that is pretty much that for the turn. So it's still looking okay. It's getting a little bit dicey though. Every time a turn goes by and you fail to kill a really, really hard-hitting unit like lesser Obsidian Golems, the chances are they can kill one of your units. And because it's been so tightly packed in there, we haven't been able to get the level of multi-charges that you would ideally like to be doing. There are a lot of units that were behind each other because we both just threw forward this big wall of meat and stone. Turn 6. So, Grogger's Goons possibly in trouble, but they have been regenerating. I would expect the Mincer possibly to die there. It's not very high nerve. The Winged Half-Breed charges into the Trolls there, hoping to take them out and take out their unit strength. These lesser Golems are Bane chanted up, so they're going to be finding it very easy to kill those Trolls that they've just flank charged. And down here, you can see, I think something got killed there. But over here you can see that the Mincer only becomes wavered, not much damage done there at all. And Grogger's Goons are finished off. Quite a bit of damage dished out there. These Trolls are not taken out by the Great Winged Half-Breed, so they're pleased with that. And although it's looking like there's a lot of dead Goblin units now, and there's possibly more Abyssal Dwarf units, in terms of scoring, the Goblins are currently in the lead. And also a lot of the Abyssal Dwarf units are at Death's Door, or at least in a position where they can be put in Death's Door very easily. So the only units that are in a scoring area for the Abyssal Dwarves are all the Golems basically, and I think the Great Winged Half-Breed as well. The Berserkers, who haven't really been in the game, and the Black Souls are not majority within 12 of the centre at this stage. So Goblin turn 6, and if I can just throw everything into the centre and the game ended, then I would just win then, because I just have more unit strength in there. So Cuslow and the Trolls double charge into the Obsidian Golems there, and can't kill them. But you can also see that the Sniffs have moved up behind them as well, so that they can be within 12 of the centre. The Trolls countercharge the Greater Winged Half-Breed and take it down. It was already wounded. The Mincer just turns sideways a bit, and I can't remember whether there was any particular logic to that. It may have been required for something to get out the way, so that somebody else could get through. Harambe not doing much, and the way that's looking now, at the end of turn 6, if it ends, the Goblins will win, because I've got 2 hordes in there, I've got a regiment, and I've got 3 monsters, whereas my opponent only has 2 hordes and a monster. So, moving on, and that is in fact how the game ends. There is no turn 7, so it's all over, and it's a victory for the Goblins. So let's see, if we did have a turn 7, what would have happened next? Well, I think all the Abyssal Dwarf units would have probably been able to get majority within 12 here. Definitely the Berserkers up at the top. The horde of Black Souls may have been slightly dicey, because they would have to pivot and then only move 4 inches, so it's very possible they wouldn't have been able to make it. The Mincer probably would have been killed, and Harambe may have been killed as well by a couple of units there. Actually, I suppose if the Black Souls had charged Harambe, then they possibly could have got in the centre as well. Cuslow or the Horde of Trolls could have been killed by the Obsidian Golems on the right, so that would have taken out some of my unit strength as well. However, there's very little to threaten the Wizard, who's not pictured in the shot here, and the 2 War Trombones, and a lot of these Abyssal Dwarf units are very close to death. The Black Souls are really up there. It was quite a poor roll to not kill them earlier, so they probably would have died. The Obsidian Golems on the right there, probably either them, well, I would have focused on them because they're worth more unit strength, they probably would have died as well. So if everything went to average, I would expect to have still won at this stage, but it's not a guarantee by any means. There are some other options as well. I'm not sure whether the Greater Golem would have been able to fit past the Mincer and get to the Trolls behind them with a single pivot. I'm guessing probably not, but you couldn't totally rule that out based on this picture. So it was a close one though. It was looking really good for the Goblins, and then my killing power started slowing down dramatically as we headed into the last few turns, and I just wasn't able to finish off these really, really tough, high defense, decent nerve units that the Abyssal Dwarves have to offer. And I started losing quite a lot of units in the last couple of turns as well. So it was definitely swinging back in the Abyssal Dwarf favour, but a lot of their units are hanging by a thread. So very, very good game, very close to quite evenly matched lists, because I did have a fair amount of crushing strength to deal with the high defense that the opposition put forward, but they also had some decent killing power as well. I think the deployment was a plus for me, because there are certain units, as you can see here, like the Berserkers and the Black Souls, who were just never able to make it into the middle by the end because they were so far out on the flank and they're not the fastest. And I think I did quite well holding up the speedier flank as well. The Sniffs dancing round them and throwing units in front of them to keep them away from the middle where they could have supported other units. I think that was quite good. So all in all, pretty happy with this Goblin list. There is another battle report coming up with this same list against a different army as well, so you can look forward to seeing that. And there's also a battle at this same point level that I played with Undead as well, so you can also look forward to that. And as I'm recording this, earlier today was the announcement for Kings of War 3rd edition, so I'll be doing something on that as well. By the time you see this video, it's possible I may have already done something on that. We shall see. Anyway, Don't forget to give me your thoughts on this game. If you spotted any horrific rules mistakes, which there's normally at least a couple in every game. That usually dominates about 75% of the comments. And any thoughts on the tactics employed by either of the forces, the lists, fighting at this point level? What do you think about it? Do you think it's too crowded? Do you think the armies were built efficiently for this points level? Do you think there were a few too many just random toys in there and just not enough of a solid core, perhaps? Anyway, don't forget to check out all the links in the description, all the various social media, join my Facebook group to see what I'm up to. There's Twitter down there as well. Don't forget to send me all your money, obviously, because that's how society works. And all that remains to be said, I think, is good night out there, whatever you are.